I've been seeing a lot of conversations online about Turo hosts throughout the country being notified by their city or county that they aren't allowed to be operating a Turo fleet from their homes. And as a result, these Turo hosts either need to stop operations, invest in the proper space or parking lot to conduct their business, or they could potentially have some hefty fines and consequences. This is a discussion that's nothing new, and the discourse around whether or not a Turo host can or even should operate a Turo fleet from their home has been going on for as long as I've been a Turo host, since back in 2017. But just because this is an old conversation doesn't mean that this isn't an important one to have. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about why operating a Turo fleet out of your house is not only not recommended, it's something that I have never done and wouldn't recommend that you do either, but I'm also going to be talking about what other avenues you can look at if this is something that you're potentially concerned about, or if you're looking to move operations from your personal home. So let's get started. Now, I personally don't believe that anybody operating a Turo fleet should operate out of their own home. And whenever I use the term operate, what I mean is actually doing the key exchanges. I don't think that guests should ever, under any circumstances, go to your personal residence to pick up or drop off a car. And there are really a few reasons why I firmly believe this. Number one is safety. At the end of the day, I do not want guests knowing where I live. This is a very real safety concern, and it's something that I personally am very uncomfortable with. The reality is we don't know the people who are renting our cars, and even the ones that we do know and are consistent renters aren't necessarily people that we want to be able to have access to our personal residence. I'm a big believer that you really don't know what anybody ever could do, and I would hate for a guest to return one of my cars and then I hit them with a smoking fee or a gas fee or an inconvenience fee of some kind, and then they end up coming back to my house the next day to confront me. It may sound like something that would never happen, but I have actually heard of this exact scenario happening with other hosts, and in my opinion, it's something that's pretty avoidable by just not operating from your home, and this is a safety concern that I do not want to deal with at all. For this reason, even if you only have one Turo car, I'm a big believer that you shouldn't be doing key exchanges from your home. It's just too much of a risk. The second reason why I don't recommend operating from your house and why I don't personally is because I don't want to be a nuisance to my neighbors. Turo has what they call a good neighbor policy, and it basically means that you have to adhere to whatever local, state, city, county guidelines that your city has outlined for Turo hosts or for parking situations or for conducting a business out of a personal residence. The reality is Turo guests are, for the most part, a bit inconsiderate. They pick up cars late and return them very early. They're up taking photos of the cars at all hours of the day. They blare music, they leave trash, they linger in the parking lot. And whenever you're renting a commercial space, it's not a big deal that they do any of these things, but if this is happening in front of your house or in front of your neighbor's house, yeah, I could see how that would be an issue. And if I had a random person taking photos of a car in front of my house, yeah, I wouldn't be cool with that. And obviously, as I've grown my fleet, one of the core reasons why I don't keep cars at my house is because I just don't have the space. HP and I have 3 personal cars. We keep our camper van at our house, so if we also did vehicle key exchanges at our home, we would be taking up neighbor spots left and right. And I don't want to do that. And while technically speaking, in the city that I live in, you actually can park in front of a neighbor's house. As homeowners don't actually own the street that their house is in front of and anybody can park in front of it, there is kind of the unspoken rule that whoever owns that house has that parking spot and you really shouldn't take it. Again, I really abide by the philosophy of don't be an ass. Now, these are the reasons why I've never done key exchanges out of my house, but then there is, of course, the question of if you are somebody who's currently operating out of your home, how can you pivot from operating out of a commercial space or out of a parking lot, and what types of different options do you have available to you? Now, I not only want to break down what I've done with my own fleet that I have found to be really successful, but I also want to give you some ideas on what you can do with your own fleet as well. But to give you some context into my own fleet, while I don't do key exchanges out of my house, I do work on cars at my house, or I should say my husband does. So we store our cars at an offsite lot, which I will go into detail here in a few minutes, and then that's where we do all of our key exchanges. That's where we take photos, that's where guests pick up the car, it's where they drop off the car, and it's where really any guest-to-guest interaction takes place, which all in all is quite rare given the fact that we do remote key exchanges. But in between rentals, whenever cars need to be cleaned or worked on, we do that work at our house, and we do it in our garage or in our driveway. We're very cognizant to not store a lot of cars at our house because we not only don't want to draw unwanted attention to us, but we also don't want to piss off our neighbors. And so if there is a scenario where we have a lot of broken cars or cars that are out for recalls, which as I'm recording this video is absolutely the case because we have 1 car that's broken and 3 that are out with recalls, we'll try to space them out throughout the city at family members' homes, which we're fortunate that we have family members that are willing to store some cars for us for free. Now, of course, if you are someone who doesn't want to operate out of your home at all, or if you want to pivot your operations from your house to a commercial space, there are some really great paths that you can pursue that are extremely cost effective. Now, to give you some context, I live in Dallas, and Dallas is very expensive, so buying or even renting a lot for HP and I is simply not in the cards. We have looked at buying a shop, which would be a combo YouTube studio, HQ, and Turo facility, but if we didn't have the ability to use a shop as a multi-use space rather than a Turo-only facility, a shop would never be doable because the space would be too expensive. Local shops cost anywhere from $3,000 to $50,000 per month, if not more, and to buy a space would cost upwards of $1 million. In fact, $1 million would be a good deal. So I, like many of you, share the sentiment that buying a shop or buying a parking lot oftentimes doesn't make financial sense, and you're oftentimes better suited to go these more non-traditional routes. One option that you do have available to you, though it is my least favorite option, is to keep your cars at a 24-hour facility, something like a 24-hour gym, a Walmart, or even a 24-hour gas station. This could be a temporary space that you could go to store cars and do key exchanges. And the reason why I specifically say 24 hours is that this way your car won't stick out like a sore thumb if your car is parked there overnight, if a guest returns very late or very early. For example, if you park at a 24-hour Walmart, your car is going to be less noticeable than if you parked at a Target that closes at 10 p.m. This is an okay option because at least it does get the guest to an offsite location, but it isn't my favorite option either because you still run the risk of having your car towed or the business owner of whatever business you're parking at telling you that you can't park there anymore. And while this is, in my opinion, better than parking at your home and doing key exchanges there, it certainly isn't an ideal situation either. I would view this as a very temporary solution. A second option, and this is what I currently do, is to go to a local retail center or even an office park, contact the owner and ask if you can rent a few spaces. And this type of setup is actually a lot more common than you probably think. The very first Turo location that I had was at a business that I owned, a separate business that had nothing to do with Turo. So of course that was a very easy solution and we didn't have to ask the business owner permission because I was the business owner. But our second location was at a small business park. I contacted the landlord and said, hey, would you be interested in renting out a few spaces? And I ended up renting 3 spaces at $50 per space per month. That landlord ended up selling his lot and the new owner didn't want us parking there, so we ended up moving to our third location, which was a small retail center. We contacted the owner of this retail center and we asked if we could rent a row of spots, and now we pay $50 per month for 4 to 5 spots. I say 4 to 5 because 1 technically isn't a spot, but we use it as 1, bringing our spots to 5 total, even though we only pay for 4. This has been plenty for our fleet, and while we do occasionally have overflow where we have more cars than we have spots available, we'll simply park in the next door retail center temporarily and we'll move the cars around as different cars get booked out. We actually aren't the only ones that do this in the retail center that we park at, as there is a box truck fleet owner that also parks there, and in the past there's also been U-Haul trucks. So the idea of renting out individual spaces rather than full lots is an idea that a lot of other business owners have. So it is pretty common, and if you contact a landlord, chances are you probably aren't the first one to contact them about this. But I gotta be honest, at 29 cars, we are finally beginning to outgrow our spaces. And now that we are growing out of this, we are beginning to look at different solutions, and this is where small independent dealerships or auto body shops come into play. In the area that we operate in, there are a number of auto body shops and dealerships that are independently owned and operated that have extremely large parking lots that aren't being used. And we've begun conversations with these dealerships and shops to try to rent out some of those smaller lots. Another option that we've been looking at is a local church, which has a massive parking lot that's never full, as well as some local car washes that have plenty of spaces as well. The point is, though, is that parking solutions can be easily found if you contact businesses and buildings where either the landlord or the business owner is relatively easy to reach. I would not encourage you to find a permanent solution through large businesses like Home Depot or Walmart or large hotels, because the reality is these multi-billion-dollar businesses aren't going to care about a few extra $100 that they can make from somebody renting out their spots, and they will actually view you more as a liability than an income generator. But if you can contact a small-time landlord or a small business owner, you can make your pitch to them, and chances are they'll view you as an easy $200 to $300 that they can make each and every month. You can contact these small business owners pretty easily, give them your pitch, make them an offer, and you can even try to sweeten the pot by telling them that you can do things like pick up trash and keep an eye on the property when they're not there. That's what I did with both of the people that I've rented spaces from, and each time it's worked really well. This option right here, the idea of renting out a few spaces from a small business owner or from a landlord, is, in my opinion, the ideal situation for a smaller Turo host. But obviously there's going to be a time where you may grow out of that as well. And like I mentioned a moment ago, HP and I are getting to that point. And that's where the third option comes into play, which is to rent or buy an actual shop. But truthfully, this type of setup really should be a last resort, and you should only do it if it actually makes sense for your business model. Like I mentioned earlier, HP and I are looking to buy or rent a shop in the last year, but the only reason why we're able to justify this investment is because of the fact that we would turn it into an HQ for all of our businesses, from content creation to Turo, working on our cars, and more. But truthfully, if Turo was our only business that we had, But truthfully, if Turo was your only business, getting a shop exclusively for Turo would be unnecessary, and at the very least, it would be extremely expensive. But what I have looked into is industrial office spaces. In Dallas, we have these that can be extremely nice and can cost anywhere between $4,000 to $6,000 per month, to extremely basic ones that could cost $1,500 per month. But these are, in my opinion, only worthwhile if you A, work on your own cars, need a true shop space, or B, if you're someone who has another business that can help absorb the cost of the shop. And obviously, you also have the option of buying land, buying a shop, buying a lot. Those are scenarios that will depend on the cost in your area. For example, if I lived in a lower cost of living area, I would have done this a long time ago, but I don't, so I haven't. When it comes to vehicle parking and vehicle storage, I oftentimes think that this is the topic that many Turo hosts overthink. You don't need a whole parking lot for your Turo fleet unless you have hundreds of cars. And you don't even need the same number of spots as you have cars. I have 29 cars, I have 5 spots, and I'm just now starting to grow out of that. But I do think it's important to be mindful about local rules and regulations. For example, be a good neighbor. Don't draw negative attention to yourself, and operate your business from a business location, even if that's just 4 spots that you rent from a commercial landlord. At the very least, make sure that you do have a plan in place if you are a Turo host that's operating from your current house, and what will you do if one day the city says that you can no longer do that? Having a plan B in the back of your mind is always a good idea because it puts you in a position of success if things change overnight. And hopefully, if any of these scenarios end up happening to you, this video gives you some good ideas of what you could do with your own fleet. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.